Hi everyone, it's Charlene with Tranquil Tuesdays, and today I'm going to talk about aging versus fermentation in pu'er tea, which is one of the most misunderstood topics in tea in general, I think. But this is the third in a series of 4 videos I've been making about pu'er tea. If you haven't had a chance to watch the first 2, I encourage you to find them. I will link them up here in YouTube. I think that this distinction between aging and fermentation is really key for pu'er tea appreciation. It basically breaks down into the 2 main types of pu'er tea, which is Sheng and Shou pu'er tea. Shou pu'er tea is the most commonly available pu'er tea. It is, I would say, 95% of the time when you are drinking pu'er tea at a restaurant or a tea house or someone's home, you are drinking Shou pu'er tea. And quite honestly, I did not like pu'er tea when I was drinking Shou pu'er tea. I felt the flavors were too strong and too heavy and a little too mildewy for me. But it wasn't until I had a chance to try Sheng pu'er tea that it really changed my mind about what pu'er tea could be, and it was a different expression of the key flavor notes that make pu'er tea so distinctive. And they were an expression of the flavor notes that really agreed with me and helped me and allowed me to appreciate pu'er tea. So I want to talk a little bit more about that today. I'm going to do the second steeping of the same Sheng loose leaf pu'er tea I made in the previous video. I think I put about 1 tablespoon of the loose leaf Sheng pu'er tea in this Sheng teapot, which is about 100 milliliters. I think I'll write the exact things in the comment below. So I've already done 1 steeping. Ooh, smells good. And I'm just doing the second steeping now. And so, like I've said in the previous video I did on appreciating pure and natural teas, if you have a nice high quality tea leaf, preferably unscented, you will be able to appreciate it over multiple steepings. So this is the second steeping, like I've said, and on subsequent steepings of a tea, you often are able to access different characteristics of the tea. It's almost like different parts of the personality of a tea are expressed on different subsequent steepings. So on the first steeping, I really tasted a lot of kind of earthy, kind of mushroomy flavors. So let's see what it is on the second steeping. I was using boiling water. Ooh, it smells so good. Okay. So it just smells super woodsy and like camphor, like kind of like campfire wood. And as I mentioned in the previous video, you might be surprised at the color of this liqueur. It's so light compared to Shou pu'er. This is a Sheng pu'er, like I said, and the brew is very light. And that is one of the distinctive and key differences, which we'll talk about in a second. Shou pu'er is usually like a very dark, cloudy, almost opaque brew that's the color of like dark soil. Okay, so I'm gonna try this. Yeah, I would say that this second brew is definitely more of the woodsy notes and less of the earthy notes. Like it smells like you're in some kind of wood cabin in the forest. I mean, I feel like all the Sheng pu'er teas, it's just evocative of being in a forest. It's like wood and earth and those notes. But I would say the second steeping is definitely more woodsy. Okay, so I've talked about the differences in the color of the brew in Sheng and Shou pu'er. And I would say the key difference between these 2 teas is how they're made. And it's the difference of aging versus fermentation. So Sheng Pu'er tea is the tea leaf picked, withered, the oxidation is controlled, and then you use heat to seal the process of oxidation. And at that point, it is almost similar to a green tea. Not quite, but almost. It doesn't taste at all like green tea because the leaves are very different, but you could drink that tea then, like a week or a month after finishing processing, and that would be considered a very young Sheng Pu'er tea. But like we talked about in the last video, and I will link it again below, the origins of Pu'er tea are steeped in the history of the ancient tea horse trade route. And that was a trade route where Pu'er tea was pressed into discs and traded on the back of mules that took a long journey along the mountain in these very narrow roads to Tibet, where China was trading tea for horses. They wanted the horses for their military. Tibet had horses, but Tibet wanted tea. And it is that long, in that long journey on muleback in a pressed disc, the Sheng Pu'er tea was slowly aging, and in the aging process, the flavors were developing in complexity. So similar to like an aged whiskey or an aged wine, Sheng Pu'er that is aged is prized for very distinctive and hard-won complexity from aging. And just like you cannot rush an aged wine or an aged whiskey, you can't rush an aged pu'er, which is probably very frustrating for tea merchants or people who want to profit off of such a distinctive and prized tea. So in the 1970s, a bunch of tea producers and merchants came up with a second type of pu'er tea, Shou Pu'er tea. So this is a relatively new type of pu'er tea in the history of pu'er tea. And Shou Pu'er tea is a type of pu'er that takes a leaf that was picked and then creates an artificial fermentation process with these leaves to mimic the flavor of a naturally aged Sheng Pu'er. So Shou Pu'er is actually fermented and Sheng Pu'er is aged. The fermentation was created, or that process was developed in order to mimic the flavor of the aged Sheng Pu'er. And like I said, Shou Pu'er is probably the tea that you have tried if you've tried pu'er tea. If you go to dim sum and try Pu'er tea, which is the Cantonese way of saying pu'er, that is the flavor. It's that dark, heavy, musky, kind of mildewy. Yeah, I think musky is almost the right word. Musky, camphor. Those are kind of the most common notes associated with Shou Pu'er tea. So yeah, that was a tea developed in the 70s. A type of pu'er tea developed in the 70s, and now the most commercially available, most common, most widespread type of pu'er tea. And while we are both pu'er teas, Shou and Sheng, they are such different expressions of the same leaf and the same growing region. And so if you have a chance to try some Sheng Pu'er tea, I really encourage you to try it, because it might change your mind about pu'er tea the way it changed my mind about pu'er tea. And if you think about aging and fermentation, I really hope it sticks in your mind that Sheng Pu'er tea is a tea that can be and is often prized for slow aging, and Shou Pu'er tea is a tea that has been fermented artificially, often in a factory. I'm actually going to post a link below that has pictures of when I traveled to Yunnan and how I visited a factory that was making Shou Pu'er tea, so you'll get pictures of how that's made and more details about that fermentation process. But yeah, just to make it clear, fermentation only happens in Shou Pu'er, and Sheng Pu'er is sometimes aged, sometimes not. I hope that clears up any confusion about aging and fermentation in pu'er tea. If you have more questions, please leave a comment below, and I will talk more about older aged teas in the next video. Thanks a lot!